out. All right, it's 5:30. It's a beautiful night. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll call the meeting to order and ask Sandra to record the attendance. Please take a look at tonight's agenda if you haven't already done so, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I move to approve this evening's agenda.
Thank
I
you.
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on. Approval of the minutes of June 21st. This was last month's meeting. The minutes are rather substantial because we had some deep conversation about a couple of issues. Take a moment to review the minutes if you haven't yet already done so. And if you find them acceptable, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I motion to approve the minutes from last meeting. I second.
Thanks, Renee and Grace. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on. This is the point in our meeting where we acknowledge visitors wishing to speak to any agenda or non-agenda items. I don't see anyone in the room today. Do we have anyone on Zoom? Okay. Which brings us to Article 5, which is the strategic plan update. And I know that Chris was planning on joining us to give us some information. And he is not here unless he is on Zoom. Is Chris in the Zoom waiting room?
If we swap, because
Yeah, maybe let's do that.
I called him right as I was driving to see if he said he was en route. I just want to make sure he was coming in.
Why don't we move ahead? Actually, let's skip Articles 5 and 6 for the moment, because I know I would like him here for the conversation for Article 6 as well. Let's move on to Article 7, which is World War II veteran, the Virgil Westdale tribute. So I know that we discussed this at our last meeting, but maybe Sandra, if you can give a little recap, and then we can discuss the further information that was included in the packet.
Yeah, thank you. So as you mentioned, this is a follow-up at the end. This is regarding a request from the American Legion Post and a member of Cascade Christian or Cascade Community Church. And they had talked to Grace about honoring Virgil Westdale, and they like to do something at the museum gardens. And it was thought that perhaps renaming the park might be a nice honor and tribute to him. So I'll let Grace, if you have some additional information, I'll let Grace take it from here and we can go.
I reached out to the American Legion, like the American Legion contacts that had reached out, and then I guess that's it. There were two people at the American Legion, and told them that the DDA was happy to participate, and then asked them if they could present to us or get us some ideas of what they were thinking. And then I haven't heard back from them yet, so.
So would it be appropriate to table this to the next meeting then, so that we
And I can
get
reach
some
out to
more
them again, yeah.
information from them? Before we do that though, is there other input or questions? Yes, Sandra.
I did speak with Vic Gillis, who's on the historical committee, just to run it past him, and he did not see any issues with this or concerns, with this request at all. So.
In terms of the Historical Society.
Correct. And
allowing the park to
the
be
rename,
renamed.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just, are we looking at just primarily a plaque naming the park? I guess I wanted to get what everybody's perception of this
Talk
is.
about a Flag too, I think we had mentioned a plaque and a flag, if memory serves.
Right.
And I didn't get a lot of specifics from them, other than they were definitely wondering about renaming it after him. And then I asked, do you want to do some type of, if you have any ideas for a plaque type memorial, something? And then they were just super enthusiastic that the DDA was on board, and they said we have $1,000 to $2,000 from the pop can drive that they do at Ace Hardware. And then I said, okay, we're looking for some, feedback. And then.
Okay.
So Rick, as this was brought up though, did you have any idea, a vision, a thought process of?
No, when I was thinking about this, I was just thinking of a nice plaque naming the park.
Yeah.
And then like a stone with a plaque, a large stone with a plaque describing, some of taking bits and pieces from his obituary.
Well, one of the things that we had brought up at our transportation committee meeting was, and I don't know if this would fit or not, as Grace was describing Virgil's life story and so forth,
Mhm.
if there was a way to get that story, I don't know how it's done, it's put on a website or whatever the case may be, and if we had a QR code to be able to attach or, next to
That's a
that
great
plaque,
idea.
so that people, 'cause you look
Sure,
at
would
this
read
name,
more
who is
about it. Sure.
Dale?
Well, couldn't it be attached to the Cascade Township
Yes.
website?
Absolutely.
Sure. So instead of having a separate website, but I think that's a great
Okay.
idea.
Yeah, kind of where each park got its name. We had that article about Peace Park, which is from a
Oh.
poem.
That would be a great idea.
The
If we could
Parks,
put
so the Parks Committee just met this morning and they brought up on their own, looking at the parks part of the website
Yep.
and they were like taking it down and looking at it. That would be
That's a
something
great
that would be
place.
good for that, right?
Absolutely.
Here are the parks we have.
For all the
Great
different
idea.
parks.
Yeah.
So that they could,
And
Really?
Grace, I'm wondering if you can, when you talk to the
Yes.
veterans, if you can tell them, these are some of the things that we've talked about, because
Okay.
maybe they don't
Yeah.
have we
Could-
have no
could be.
idea. of what
Exactly.
to
And they were
do,
like, we're
you
just
know?
stuck with Grace. And I'm like, I'm just the middleman. So I'll invite them to the meeting. They
Yeah.
were just delighted
Yeah.
that we were on board.
I think that's a wonderful idea too, to invite them to the meeting here if they'd like to have a conversation with all of us.
Mhm.
Yeah, but definitely feel free to share the things that we brought up. And they may say, yeah, that's all great.
Yeah.
You know, we
Right.
think we're on board with what you're
Because a
planning.
lot
I
of
think a
times
plaque with a
people,
rock.
they don't have any
Yeah.
idea. They're like, we really would like
just
honor. but
not a
we don't
lot
know
of
how to do
information,
that.
right.
but just
Mhm.
so the question is, who's going to make the final decision too on what it's going to look like? Is it us? Is it the American Legion or is it the park committee?
Well, that's a good question.
Okay,
Who-
between the
who
three,
Has the domain
us.
over that garden.
Between the three, it's us. Because I asked Ben and he said, go to the DDA because I went to the Parks Committee
Got it.
originally.
Okay. All right.
so,
So
Can
we'll
I-
just,
Go ahead, Sandra.
I'm sorry.
Maybe the
I
board.
asked Ben as well. He thought the DDA would make a recommendation to the township board.
Gotcha.
That's fair.
But
And I'd like to be the board member who votes against World War II, highly decorated World War II veteran
never
and
know.
with the American Legion.
Never know. All right.
and I don't remember who just mentioned that the American Legion said that they had a potential couple $1,000s to
Yeah.
contribute towards this.
yeah.
So, flagpoles are pretty expensive. just
Mhm.
saying. So there may be,
Isn't there one there?
I don't,
We,
I can't
I
remember.
asked last
Okay.
meeting and
I think it's just on the post on the
Okay.
pillar of the,
So if we have a permanent flag, then that means it
Mhm.
needs to be lit.
right.
yeah.
Unless if you
Oh,
take it
yes.
down every night, because if I recall, if it is lit, then you can leave it up
Right, yes.
24/7.
If it's not, you have to take
Right.
it down.
But I,
So those are all all different things to, yes, that we'd have to put into perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good
And what,
point.
and yeah, if the DDA, if this is a DDA project,
Mhm.
those dollars then would be coming out of
Yeah.
the budget or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be.
Right.
So just so that it's not just, I think that we walk away feeling good that, yes, we can do this. And now we have an idea of a project. Now, like, who's going to pay for this?
Right.
Right.
So we,
Does-
just so we think it all the way through, please.
I think the American Legion needs to know who's going to be making the final decisions, what it looks like.
Agreed.
We can certainly run, get their opinions.
Do you want me
But-
to feel any, I think that the board would appreciate the more the DDA, the more finalized it comes to them, I think that would be,
Yeah,
Make a substantive recommendation.
Yeah,
The DDA can make a substantive recommendation about the project and the details and the plan, if there's gonna be, maintenance required, and then put that all
Yeah.
together.
my recommendation is make it no maintenance,
Right.
except for maybe having to change out the flag periodically as it wears out.
I agree.
a rock, a plaque, and a flag.
Mhm. Yeah, the name. And then maybe a rock with a plaque to describe it,
Mhm.
and then a flag.
Does it work what do you guys think about that? Is this too premature? Should I reach out to the American Legion and,
I think it's a little premature to make specific decisions. So reach out to the American Legion. tell them that we'll be putting this on the agenda
Okay.
at our next meeting.
Okay.
Invite them to attend and tell them that, unless they have a problem with our proposed plans as we discussed it here today, that's probably going to be around the lines of what we vote on at the next meeting.
So these proposed plans, I hate to go back to the cost aspect of things though, but we just think it's a rock, but.
It's
This
gonna be an
rock-
expensive
This
rock,
rock
yeah.
could be, a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
And I have so
How we
let's-
get it there and.
I'll ask
There's just a
Sandra to
lot more
pull
to
that
it.
information together and present at the next meeting, what our options are for the plaque and the, plaque presentation, so that
Sure.
we can get an idea as to cost.
Because as I hear from my kids too often, Dad, you tell us we're gonna do this, and then we end up doing this,
that's-
and you
that's
totally
it.
disappointed me. You set me up for failure.
Expectations were
Constantly.
higher than.
Exactly. I thought we we're going to see your point.
Pocketbook.
No, we're going to the waiting pool in the backyard.
Yeah.
Okay, this is-
The key to life is
Yeah.
lowering
But-
your expectations.
Let's manage
So,
those expectations.
The
you.
question I was gonna ask is, if this gets, if our expectations exceed what we think we can afford to spend on it, does the Parks Committee have any money, and would we go to them and say, would you like to join us in
The
this?
joint effort.
Yeah, which would be also a nice thing, I think.
I'm not opposed to that. I
Yeah, the
don't know
Parks
the
Committee-
answer to that.
I
but-
do, because this keeps coming up every month and we're all staring at each other. The DDA is looked at as the deep pockets in the township.
Ah,
I'm
Should
not
we-
saying whether
should
or
we
not that's
feel
right. The Parks
threatened or
Committee,
Appreciated.
either way, either
Both.
way. No, but the,
held in high
the
esteem.
Parks Committee is wanting to, is hoping to get more structure as far as finance. So the DDA's budget is clear, right? Because it's separate, how you guys get it. Parks in the past hasn't had any, it just comes out of the general fund. There's a really small amount that someone donated for a natural green space, but
Okay,
they have a pathway committee pathway fund, but
This would not fall into that.
so the Parks Committee is chomping at the bit for like
Money.
Money.
Funding.
money and like money that they.
Sure,
what do we have to
no,
work
could-
with?
Sandra, the maintenance of the park, where does that money come out of?
Buildings and Grounds maintains the park, so. Wherever they,
So
whether
they would
that's
have
the maintenance fund or.
Yeah.
park
Because the only thing
maintenance
I
and
can
DDA
see that where
maintenance.
the maintenance, as I'm visualizing this, is there gonna be maybe flowers or plantings by the flagpole, around the flagpole? Maybe not.
Maintain that garden, or is that the museum that maintains the garden? Buildings and
Buildings and
Grounds
Grounds.
maintains the garden as well?
Yeah,
They do,
'cause we
yeah.
own that.
I like to keep it simple.
Oh, yeah, I want to keep it real simple.
Right, so.
And, doesn't have to have it. I was,
And Sandra, that I know from Ben had said in the past that the DDA funds, one buildings and grounds salary, half your salary, and am I wrong? That's what I remember hearing.
Vaguely, yeah.
I believe it's half of B and G's salary.
Half of
one person.
employee?
I believe so.
It's confusing and kind of, there's a few more
Yeah.
things I don't.
Right, yes.
could somebody approach Cascade Christian Church and see if they want to contribute to it? Because wasn't he a longtime member of that?
Your memory is better than mine. on this.
Cascade Fellowship.
No.
No.
it's-
I don't know.
Cascade Christian Church. Oh, wait,
Yeah,
that's where
Cascade
the
Christian.
visitation is.
Right.
Let's see, it's up at the top.
Yeah, Cascade. So that's the
Cascade
one right
Community Church.
there
Okay,
next to it, isn't it?
I'm not
Yeah, like-
sure.
Yeah, just on the other side.
So.
So that may require a little more investigation.
Yeah, I mean, we could just ask,
Right, no, I agree.
even if they gave $500 or whatever, it's,
So if we get some initial pricing on some things so that we have an idea, right now, we're kind of
Yeah.
poking it, we're not sure.
I think that's the next best step, is to find out the different options and the different prices, and then we can make an educated decision about whether or not the DDA can fund that entirely, or whether we need to discuss, getting contributions from others.
Just throwing out an idea here. I don't know, maybe it's already accounted for, but as we are going to be building the new fire station, is there a flagpole there?
It was
that
in
we
the
could repurpose?
drawings. That's on the current fire
Existing.
station.
Correct.
There is,
Oh.
yes.
That we could take
Repurposing it?
that fire pole, if they're not reusing it at the new fire station,
Oh.
and move it. And then also, is there someplace else where there, I hate to say, is there a big rock there or someplace that again could possibly be repurposed if it's not being used?
I'm trying to think of the empty lot across our street that we own that's
Or
just,
anything at Peace
Big
Park?
rock.
Is there a big rock at Peace Park? Maybe we could.
Yeah, be
Transplant?
careful. I don't know.
I don't
That might.
Well, then how
You'll
much is
need to,
it?
I'll ask you to look into that as
Yeah.
well. And the only hesitation I have about the flagpole is whether or not it's to scale. I mean, you can, I'm sure, cut it. Like if this is a flagpole that's gonna dwarf the historical,
curtain.
yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, for some reason, I'm picturing the flagpole.
let's
as
hope
the-
it dwarfs the rest of the
Right,
garden.
well, yeah.
And,
Joking.
and the timeline on that fire station project, when are they moving out of that building?
I believe August timeframe.
Oh,
In the
so
fall,
quickly.
yeah.
Okay.
August,
Well, let's
September.
throw that into the mix
Good
though as
ti-
well.
good
If there's
thinking.
if there's a way to salvage or
I know that's
repurpose materials that we already own, so much the better. Particularly if the pricing that you get back for the plaque ends up being
Yeah.
more expensive than we're conceiving.
Okay.
One more thing, why not contact his family, see if they want to contribute?
We could do that as well.
You know, there's plenty of grandkids and great grandkids as I'm looking at that.
Mhm.
Does the cement, when they do a flagpole and they put the cement in to set it, I don't know if it's easy. I guess we'll find that out. Sometimes it's harder to, people just wanted,
I think that we'll find that out when Sandra gets information about the.
It won't have to be huge, so they don't
Right.
have to bring like big equipment in or.
I would think
Right.
not, but I know zero about this. Do you have questions for us, Sandra, about what we've asked you to research?
I do not.
All right, so we will
Thank you.
discuss this next month.
And I
Unless
will-
anyone has other questions or comments.
I'll call them this week and just relay the information and ask them for information and invite them to the next meeting.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone else? All right, let's move backwards to Article 5, strategic plan. We jumped around a little bit, Chris, because we knew you were in traffic. Strategic plan update. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep, absolutely. You guys have in your meeting packet the final list of priorities and tasks that are going to go to the township board next week as we wrap up this process. It is in the process of being formatted more nicely than the red and white memos that you've been seeing. There are, there's still some opportunity to make revisions, but not substantial ones at this point. So actually, the primary reason why I'm here is to talk to you guys about next steps, about the list of to-dos that you have in the strategic plan and what you guys want to do to start doing to start making those things happen, right? I think it's maybe time to stop talking about what we're going to do and start doing it, maybe. There are a couple things that are ongoing, or at least one thing that's kind of ongoing that I know about that's in the strategic plan, which is the transportation committee's work in developing alternatives to Route 29 and proposing them to the rapid, and that has started. And I'm honored and excited to have been invited to be part of that process. So we'll be, McKenna will be providing a scope of work and a budget for that to you guys next month. Other than that, there are a number of things on the list that I think would fall under the heading of a DDA strategic plan to take the things in the township strategic plan to the next level and move them towards implementation or start implementing them. But what I wanted to talk about tonight in that regard is specifically what do you want to include on that list in that DDA strategic plan? And once we have, okay, this is what's going to be included, then my question to you is, are you going to want McKenna's help? And if so, for what? And then I can provide some more detailed information on that and we can get this all going. So in pursuit of that, I've provided you guys tonight, in addition to the final priorities and tasks, a memo that summarizes just the DDA portion. And then after that has all of your tasks in timeline order, which hopefully aren't too overwhelming. And again, in the final strategic plan, hopefully will be laid out in a way that's a little more readable. But in the first, page and a half, it sort of lays out, all right, in bullet form, what are we looking at here? And that is, planning more specifically for what we call during the strategic plan process, the upper and lower village, upper village being the immediate vicinity of this facility, lower village, of course, being Cascade Road at the bottom of the hill from Thornapple Plaza to the river. As well as then separately from that, the 28th Street corridor, which has its own needs and goals, right? But needs to be incorporated because it's in your district. In addition to that stuff, you could potentially also include the idea of creating a gathering place. That could be part of the upper village, could be a separate thing. I'm not sure. The fact that we're not sure makes that, puts that on the to-do list, right? That's what I would think would fall under that DDA strategic plan heading. But I'm open to your thoughts on that. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question on the, going back to the gathering space, and as I was reading the following pages and so forth, gathering space again came up with parks. It's part of theirs also, and again, we know that the library is looking at a gathering space.
Yeah.
And to where there's it falls under a bunch of different committees, so to speak.
Yes, it does.
So how, I mean, and that may be part of also one of the tactics we have on here in terms of creating a subcommittee with these other groups, the planning commission, the board, the library, and so forth, to try to figure out who is going to lead that central gathering space.
Mhm.
I guess the point is I'd hate to see the DDA do a lot of work on something that somebody else is
Totally.
driving the bus. They're driving
Yeah.
the bus and we think that we're driving the bus and we shouldn't be driving the bus if the library has already kind of said, okay, you know what? Forget all the rest of you. You've had the
We have it.
opportunity, you didn't take it. We're going to try and run with this now. And I think it would be our due diligence to piggyback with them, of course, and help them, if not during the construction or during the planning, definitely after as a DDA, to say, how can we help make this gathering space alive for our community on a monthly basis or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think step one on that particular topic is that communication. And it may be, the strategic plan says form a joint subcommittee that has representatives from everybody. So we're communicating. If the library is already so far down the path that the answer ends up being, actually, the library is doing it, and we all need to support what they're doing. I don't know that that's the answer, but if that's the answer, then I think we need to, step one is to determine if that's the answer, and then say, all right, that's what we're doing. Which is to say that particular issue may be separate from your DDA strategic plan, because it has to be an answer may already be presenting itself and you just have to respond to that.
Right.
So, okay.
Right, and then I didn't realize that it probably won't go anywhere, but just so that everybody knows, I just learned about it last week. There's a bunch of leftover stimulus money, American Recovery, probably like 100, I can't remember if it's 100 or 200,000, or I'm sorry, 100 to 200 million that the county has in surplus that they're accepting applications for different projects, and it can be from all the different municipalities or nonprofits, whatever.
Oh.
So then I wasn't part of it, but the board approved that they're gonna ask for the pedestrian/bike improvement over the Thornapple. And then also, what was the second thing? Internet for a neighborhood out on the edge of the township doesn't have it. Ben had recommended the remaining funding for the library project too.
Okay.
It's technically the county. Then there was a long discussion about, does that hurt our chances? Who knows, as far as different approaches you put in, do you throw the kitchen sink at it, or do you just focus on one or two? Ultimately, the board voted to not do the library one, but then to go to the county, to KDL, and ask that they submit that
Oh,
on their own. So
Oh, okay.
it's nothing's determined, but just for background information.
that's good to know as well. And I want to say thank you for preparing the summary that you did. I thought that that was very helpful. Having the
Much better.
summary and having the timeline was extremely informative. It helps, you know.
Thank you.
to-
Yeah,
to
hopefully
have all
that was
in
good.
one place. And I want to get some feedback from the rest of the DDA board about, and this really ties into Article 6 as well, the goal building that Michelle had kicked off and put together a document talking about visioning for the DDA board. I feel like that too can be part of our strategic planning process as a DDA board. So I would like to know, you know, do we want McKenna's help in that process in getting ourselves organized and working through this and coming up with our own directives as a DDA? Would be like a tiny miniaturized version of what the township has done, but it would help us to get started in a coordinated way rather than trying to figure this out on our own.
Sure.
So I'd like to get feedback from folks on that. Yes, Steve.
I say yes, and for the reason that, again, McKenna's got their hands wrapped around this whole thing, and they're seeing all the different pieces and parts from all the different boards and so forth that can have an effect on us hitting these targets or hitting these objectives brought onto us by the community, and keeping things aligned. I think it's very important.
Mhm.
And if McKenna's got, you know, they've got the other 4 or 5 different boards that they're working with, and we say, no, we're going rogue and we're going to do our own thing, that, you know, the things may not match up. We may be heading off to here and everybody else is over here, and the things just never align. So
Yeah.
I think that it would be our best in our best interest to utilize their time and their talent to help streamline this so that just make it easier. But I know it comes at a cost, and that'll be
We'll provide that.
One
and we'll
question
discuss it.
I have is where, with the Friends of the Library project, where does that stand now? And the other question is, who makes the final decision on what it's going to look like?
On this particular Friends of the Library, outside the library exterior.
Yeah, they're,
the
There is
proposed
a
gathering.
presentation.
Right, so they, at the last presentation we had, they had plans drawn together and they're moving forward with phase 1 or 1 and 2.
Right, that was the goal.
And that was, and they had entirely funded that, so they are.
oh,
moving
so
forward with
there,
that.
this was
Right,
100% funding.
for
on
phase
that.
1.
Yeah.
The additional phases are not yet funded. I'm not sure that they're yet finalized, but I do not know the extent to which the DDA or anyone else would have input into the design. Do you? I don't have the answer to that.
I think it would be a partnership if the DDA decided they wanted to help fund it. I think we would work with them to finalize that.
But the thing is, they already came, it's tricky because they came to, when I heard about, they hired and paid for the plan on their own, and it was already set in stages. And so, and then they asked the board for approval for that plan.
Did the board approve the plan?
Mhm.
Okay.
Because then the only reason that, the only feedback the board needed on that at that point was because technically we own the township owns the land and the county, KDL leases it, so.
And, okay, so phase 1 is approved possibly. What about phase 2 and 3? I think there was 3 phases, because if it just is only phase 1 is done, it will look like a half-finished project. And I think before they start, we need to have a commitment, whether it's the Friends of the Library or the DDA, who's going to finish this, you know, as far as funding?
Well, that's why they did it in stages, I guess. What they had said was that it's, phase 1 is okay on its own phase. They want to do phase 3, but it's at the point where they.
Right, I think so. You sound like a good person to
Yeah, you're
serve on
asking good
that
questions.
joint committee.
You may have just volunteered yourself. without knowing it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You were pointing towards him.
Nice try. Nice try. I don't have the answers to those questions, but as Sandra said.
Yeah, Sandra, what is,
Yeah.
you know more about it than probably as the inside staff. What is,
I do know that phase two did have a couple different options. I don't know when this project is starting. I guess I was not aware that the board approved it, so. But phase two, if you remember, had the amphitheater option and just a pavilion option. So I think there are some opportunities, if that's something the DDA wanted to help fund, for us to work with the library on, or the Friends of the Library on.
And I feel like I just filled out a survey about
There
this,
was
like they must have
something
just
online
They
circulated
did.
on
something.
Facebook or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
recently, because like within the last couple weeks.
And from what I remember
They
about
did.
that presentation that they had, I thought the phases were pretty good standalone, like it didn't feel as
That's the
if,
word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it didn't feel as if phase one got done and none of the others got done, that it would feel incomplete.
And-
As though the foundation was poured.
Yeah, I think they were
Right.
good standalone projects that they could be done on their own. And I think whoever helped them design that probably had that in mind, that, hey, phase one would have to be done first. If we don't have phase 2, 3, 4 funding, then it would look fine on its own. I do remember that because that was that was the question that I had in mind, but it was addressed during that or in the plans, and it made sense to me, just from memory.
They were gonna reach out too, because the Friends of the Library is a real active, that's entirely volunteer, and they were gonna reach out to, they're not a very controversial group, so they were gonna, one option that they were gonna look into is private donors, because they had great success with that in the past, although this is a little bit larger scale.
Because I think if we're gonna do it, it's gonna be more economical to just do it all at once than to do it in stages too.
Might be. We'll throw that into the mix. Let's get back to talking about
Sure.
scope of work for McKenna, because
Yep.
the next step here would be that McKenna gives us a quote for doing the work that we asked them to do in helping us develop our DDA strategic plan. So we need to tell Chris what that scope of work looks like, and maybe you can better articulate it to us.
So this is how I've thought this out. It's your choice, so you guys could tell us, cross that off, add this. But my thought would be that this is actually sort of a two-part process. First part is we'd bring in one of our urban designers in addition to Danielle and myself, who you've met. And we'd say library area, Thornapple Plaza, Cascade Road. Let's get into the design. Let's draw up what we want to see this become. And then that will give us a more clear vision of what it is that we want to do. So it'll be what we want to see this become, and then getting into that nitty gritty of how do we get there, right? That's step one. Step two is the portions of those tasks that we already know we're gonna do based on the strategic plan. And one of them is already leaving the station because of the library's project, that's there. But another one would be all the stuff we've talked about with the Thornapple Plaza Shopping Center and gathering those property owners together and getting their buy-in, or understanding that we don't have their buy-in, right? If we don't, and then adjusting accordingly. And then taking our vision and their buy-in and trying to recruit a developer, right, to take that site forward. Similarly would be then, using you guys as funds to start doing some what we call tactical urbanism or some other, things like that you guys have you've done a lot of, but hey, let's in service of what we decided we want to do in these areas. Traffic calming on Cascade Road, if we can get the road commission to let us do that kind of thing, right? Or crosswalks, or the types of grants that you guys talked about earlier in the strategic plan process that would help upgrade sites. So facades, landscaping, parking lot type grants, and your criteria for how to approve those, right? So that would be sort of the second phase. So we do the design work first, and then we start doing the implementation stuff as part two. And you guys, if you wanted to, could approve those two scopes separately, right?
And I have an idea for another scope, which is kind of
Okay.
scope 0.5, because it would
Yep.
come first, and it would be to help us as a DDA kind of center us as, and I don't know if you have the packet or if you've
Mhm.
seen what Michelle put together, if you have a copy, Sandra, that you can give him. To try to get this DDA board aligned as to our goals. We have,
Yes.
because we will have the strategic plan, which gives us the tasks and the goals that came out of that, but we as a DDA have that,
Yep.
but we also need a more, a broad, more overarching umbrella to help guide us as we're working through the strategic plan and things that may not necessarily be in the strategic plan. So
No,
I
that is a
think
good
I'd
point.
like to get a scope and a quote for that work as well, because that may be the place where we want to start.
That makes sense. And I think that there's probably some aspects of that that maybe even I've been taking for granted about like, what do you guys want to see? Right? What do we want each element of our DDA area to be in a broad level, and how do we get there? That's a good point. Now, actually, I said, how do we get there? We're not actually talking how we get there. It's what do you guys want it to be at the end? Those are your goals. And then we start working from there. So yeah, we can add that.
Can I ask you a
For
question
sure.
about this? That you guys, this goes to the goal building and the document that Michelle put together. Can you on just a basic level explain to me, or maybe this is Sandra, this is like, we've got our TIF, just dumb down, here's what our documents are. Like, I know we've got statutes that give specific authority to
Sure.
DDA, but just not stupid, basic level, what we have right now for guidelines as far as mission goals, that kind
Yep.
of stuff.
So-
Language in whatever documents.
You have your downtown plan.
Is that
And
called a downtown plan?
so you have in most cases, you have a
It's-
downtown and TIF plan.
It's all folded
Yeah,
into
one
one.
document.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so you guys have that. And this process is not designed to reinvent that wheel. It's to build off that and make it happen. So I think that when we talk about DDA goal setting, we want to use what's already in there as our starting point
Yes.
and move from there.
So is there like
when it
specific
comes to
language that was
the-
already created years ago by different people that is our kind of guide?
Yeah, I mean, Sandra has it right there in a binder.
And it's on the
Right,
website.
so-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the
Um,
Go back and look
website,
at that.
I was looking today, it was Cascade Village Plan. I don't know when this was completed. I thought it said 2020, but
Oh, I don't
Right,
know.
and then it's tricky because certain
You know-
things have to be updated every certain amount of years.
So
Yeah,
the
although-
TIF plan is specifically accessible through our DDA page. And it's
But-
called, I think, the TIF plan or the tax increment financing
Okay.
plan. And the whole shebang
And
is
that's
up
kind of the
there.
master plan for
It
the
is.
district, if you will.
Yeah.
That includes the projects that, we'd like to work towards.
Specific
Complete.
projects?
It does,
Uh,
well, I mean,
Specific and then some, we tried to keep it as general as possible.
it says things
so as
like
to not,
traffic calming.
right.
But doesn't say specifically, this is how you'll do the traffic.
You don't
calming.
want to get too specific.
Right,
in
no,
that
that's why I
plan.
would
And-
hope it wouldn't be, I hope we're not bound by.
But that's why this process would be to get more specific,
Got it.
Yes.
right? That says traffic calming. This
Right.
process would say, we're going to do a curb bump out at this intersection.
And it could
That's what
be
we're
that
going
as
for
we
here.
walk through the strategic plan, we identify things that may require updating the TIF plan, but I don't believe that any of that's been identified to date.
Yeah, and I don't think you're not in any sort of deadline to update your TIF plan. In fact, I think it's like 2040
2042.
or
Yeah.
something that you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's a long time from now. So I think it's either we fit within the TIF plan, or we say, okay, we have to amend the TIF plan because we wanted to say something different, but you're not under any obligation to change your TIF plan right now. In fact, like, you have a very long time before you're done with that.
And that's a complicated and expensive.
Right, there's different ways to do it, right? We don't want to mess up our tax revenue.
Yeah, and you
right?
don't,
wanna
yes, you
open
don't
that
want,
up.
you don't want to reset your
No.
base year.
Right,
And so I wouldn't touch the TIF at all.
No.
right.
You- the-
Correct.
the
And
part-
we're
the
not
part-
asking-
Well, yes, so I'm not, yeah.
Tax
Okay,
increment
so-
finance,
Yeah.
Steve.
So kind of piggybacking off of what Grace asked, and as we were having this conversation. And so the TIF plan
Hmm.
is our ultimate umbrella that we're working under.
I mean, the
Under that
statute.
is
gonna find it right
then
now.
our strategic, I mean, the tributaries,
Mhm.
we have our strategic plan, and then we have our goal set. I'm just trying to figure out
Yep.
how everything is gonna link together. What is priority? I mean.
Yeah.
So-
otherwise we're
And
just
that's a
all over the place.
better
wanna
way
I
to
want to
describe
dumb
what
down,
Grace
here's
was
the
asking.
road,
Yes.
and then we get to
Because-
choose where we want to stop.
I love a good flow chart. And
Yes.
so
We wanna
maybe this
purchase.
is
Maybe
a,
that's-
an
yeah, maybe
opportunity
that's it.
for a
I need
flow
to
chart.
see What.
And we
Because
don't
you're
want to
right.
say,
Rolls up to.
we
the
don't want to
TIF
say dumb
plan.
down because we're all very intelligent.
Mm,
Yeah, but.
oh,
Don't-
sorry.
don't
that was
shoot yourself
the inner
short.
monologue. was talking about myself. Just for clear reference.
Self-deprecating.
Well, we can include that, and we can include that in
self-deprecation is a
our,
sign of
like,
intelligence.
Yeah, I,
sort of work to use, like, this is how this all fits together.
because the way that the way I'm thinking of it, and this may well be wrong, is that we have the statute, we have the TIF plan,
Mhm.
we have the piece that Michelle pointed out, which is kind of the goal building and the DDA strategic plan. And then we have the township strategic plan tasks that fall underneath that. So we
Very
need to figure
specific.
out that piece that comes before we implement those tasks.
But as
So-
far
You're
as
right, you're right.
document, as far as documents,
Yeah.
is it the TIF plan?
So statutorily, there's two documents. Almost everyone puts them together like you have them.
Okay.
They're called the DDA plan and the TIF plan. You guys have them in one document. The DDA plan is getting at what Michelle's talking about, which is your goals for what you want to be. I'm getting the sense that there's a concern that right now that it's just too broad and vague, and that was intentional at the time, but we need to do some more specific goal setting.
But that might
But
make sense in that particular
the
spot.
thing, the TIF plan is this is how much money we're assuming we're going to capture, and these are the things we're going to do with it.
Right.
That's when you're talking about an umbrella, that's the like thing that justifies your ability to
Right.
collect money that would otherwise go other
It's
places.
like a broad
And-
financial plan.
Yes,
Exactly.
and that's the thing that we need to make sure we stay within, because changing it is fraught
Exactly.
and allows opt-outs and resets the base year, and is just like, we don't, so that is the thing we can't
You
change.
don't want to,
But it's broad and enough that
Yeah.
we should be able to work within it.
yeah.
Is that described somewhere on the Cascade Township's
I'm looking
website, so I
for
can
it.
do some research on it before the next meeting?
It's on
It's
the
under-
DDA's site. Hold on
Yeah,
a
it's under
second.
business.
Wait, DDA has
And
its
then-
own site?
Yeah, I didn't.
It's
oh,
under business.
Okay. DDA projects or
Page.
DDA.
Oh,
I-
under
Financial
business?
side, would suspect.
budget audits, annual report?
Just a second.
Okay, so it is under, if you go
That's what the TIF is.
cascadetownship.com/businesses
Yep.
or business, excuse me, /downtown-development-authority
Mhm.
/TIF plan, TIFPLAN,
TIF?
TIF, tax increment financing.
Is-
And the name, or if you just want to Google it, it's the DDA, the Cascade Township DDA Development Plan and Tax Increment Financing Plan.
So maybe one part of our specific task would be make it more user-friendly on our website.
I mean, you could.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble finding it, then yes, we should make it easier to locate.
Yeah, I think that makes
But
sense.
you understand.
I understand
the scope of
exactly,
work.
exactly what you're asking for.
Right.
I was just gonna ask you,
Let's bring it back, guys.
Sorry.
That's okay.
sorry, I was just gonna
No,
ask,
Chris,
just
you were
to-
on it.
in
Keep
case
going.
does anyone want a primer on tax increment financing? Are you guys comfortable with?
That's where the money comes from?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm good
We're
on that,
good?
but if
We're
anyone
good?
else, I don't
Okay.
want to
That's it.
discourage.
I just wanted to make sure. I didn't, if we needed to do like a TIF 101 quickly, but you
Well,
guys.
but
have all worked with
education
this
is
stuff.
part of what our directive and going
Education
forward will
opportunities.
include.
Right.
Right, education both to the board and training, and then also education to the public. So I think that, this is all very well
Yeah.
taken.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's not, that wasn't like a scoping question. That was like, just to make sure this discussion is understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that makes
Okay,
sense
so
to me.
then, as far as guidance and structure, we've got the TIF language. Anything else?
And then you have your existing DDA plan that goes with it, and
It's kind of a
Um,
companion piece.
And do we
Yeah.
have in writing right now a DDA plan?
yeah,
It's
like I
the
said,
same-
Sandra's
it's
got
the
it over
same
there.
document.
And it's the same, it was combined into one document, which is very, very common. So I maybe should stop talking about them as if they could possibly be two documents. It's in one
It's
document.
in the TIF.
Okay.
And everything we do with this DDA strategic plan and all your implementation stuff is going to want to flow from something. We're going to be able to want to say, this is achieving this thing that we said we were going to do in the downtown plan. And
Right.
when we do the goal setting exercises, we're going to want to make sure we tie everything back. But once we've done that, then I think we can be pretty confident that we are within our mandate, right? And that we're not going outside what we're supposed to be doing, and then we can really dive into the
And
details.
I don't recall seeing anything in the strategic planning that would have been outside the TIF plan. I mean, all of these projects were
Mhm.
pretty well
Right,
contemplated.
in those
in,
categories. yeah.
in the different categories that are in the DDA and the TIF
Yeah.
plan. So again,
Yeah,
I mean, it's always
We don't-
possible we come up with some, new crazy thing.
Yeah.
but-
No, so we don't want to screw up our financing.
Correct.
And we're not bound by, I mean, we just did a super comprehensive strategic planning process to get really good feedback so that the projects we do have the community and different board support.
And any other, when Jennifer's talking about those peripheral projects that we may see, they'll still fit in those broad categories that are in the financial plan, which is the TIF plan.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I mean, when you start with a DDA, as somebody said already, the authority is granted from the statute.
I understand that
Yeah,
part. I just
yeah.
wondered what we've
Yeah.
got as far as,
But the statute
this-
gives
this
you
is-
guys
this
a
is it.
lot
This
of
is-
flexibility.
yeah.
It's your TIF plan that boxes you a little bit because you
Right,
don't
yeah.
want to risk,
It's
you do not want to
not-
rock that boat,
Right.
So with that said, do we, and I know we were saying here that all of these objectives that have
Mhm.
been created for the strategic plan, have we confirmed that they fit within our TIF?
I could double check, but I think Jennifer is, I think
again,
her
looking
analysis
at
is
first
correct
blush,
based on
a lot of
my,
these things do
based
seem
on,
same.
yeah, yes.
Yeah,
And
okay.
we
Yeah.
can go back and make sure.
I didn't line item it through or
No,
anything,
no, no, no,
but
no,
yeah.
but from an overall general, as I'm reading through too, I remember reading those out of the TIF plan, but I just, just to your point, I didn't want us to be causing
Yes.
fraud by doing something that's not,
Yep.
that somebody could say it's not even here.
Let
so what do
me,
you
as a
do?
final strategic plan task, let me double check the compliant, the consistency, but I would be really surprised
Yeah,
because
okay.
it doesn't, you guys aren't marching down a completely different street here. It's all been about, since we started the strategic plan process, it's
Right.
all been about how do we get to where we want to go? So the where we want to go in broad terms is sort of already out there.
Right.
When I did that goal setting document, I went back to the TIF plan and we'd already started with the strategic committee meetings. So I
Oh,
kind of
okay,
looked
so
at
you-
that, but
Rolled it in.
having another set of eyes do it is a good thing.
Always.
That doesn't mean that I could have missed something that,
It's always good to have several sets of
Yeah.
eyes.
right.
So I'll ask Sandra to get a copy of Michelle's memo
Yep.
to Chris for assistance with the scoping document, because I think that
Yep.
this really does set out, a good, nice summary of the types of things that we need to be considering as part of the DDA strategic
I
planning.
agree. And I've seen probably what was a previous draft, probably Michelle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think,
think I sent one to you.
I definitely seen it. I don't
after
know if it's
that,
been.
The meeting we
yeah.
had.
Yeah, so Sandra can send me the most recent
send it
version, then
over.
I'll have it, but I think that is, you're absolutely right, that is a really valuable exercise that Michelle has already started, so,
perfect.
so let's dive into it.
All right, other questions or, yes?
Within the 3 or 4 years, there's a comment here, work with the Kent County Road Commission to implement complete streets improvements. Is part of that the speed limit on Cascade Road? Is it, because I know there was some discussion about trying to do it, and from my perspective, and I may be way off, whatever the speed limit on Cascade Road, I think will dictate some of the things that we do. So if we don't resolve this first,
Mhm.
We could be doing some pedestrian crossing and they're still going 70 miles an hour,
Yeah.
A little bit of a chicken and the
So,
egg problem.
yes.
So.
There is a-
So
Well, I think that's a really good point, and I think we're probably gonna have a lot of discussion as we go through this process that Chris can also help us with in terms of that very thing. If
gonna be
you do
contentious,
this,
yeah.
what are the ramifications for everything else,
Right.
So
down the line?
we do have a problem when it comes to speed limits though, and that's how speed limits are set legally in the state of
Yeah.
Michigan, which is that they're 80% of the average speed on the
Right.
corridor as measured.
You've
Which is to
got
say,
this
if you ask someone to change the
conversation.
speed limit, they're gonna measure, they're gonna take 80%, that's gonna be the speed limit. So it very
Might go
frequently,
up.
it very frequently does go up.
Yeah.
It's almost,
that
it's
something?
very chicken or egg because we're going to need to do some things that the road commission will let us do at current traffic and speed levels that will slow the speed down so that we can say, hey, can you measure it? And then it'll come down. It's difficult. It's the problem that a lot of communities face, especially townships, where you have to like alter the driver behavior before the regulation on driver behavior can change.
So
Um,
everybody on the board now has to drive 25 miles an
That's
hour through the
Yeah.
village.
Or give us a heads up and we'll have our extra sheriff's patrol sit at that spot and then we can all drive up and down.
Rumble
But
strips.
there are
and
simple things we
speed
can start with, because you
average.
could
A
start with
traffic
something
circle,
like.
We're gonna do the
Cascade.
I'm
traffic
saying
study at the same
Yes.
time.
Roundabout.
And traffic
Wow.
circles and things like that, yes, will slow people down. They'll annoy people, but they'll
They
slow people
will,
down.
they will hate us, but that's okay.
And then.
But
that's one way of-
Things like, this, the your speed is type of sign. Those are some of initial things that you can do that really do work to slow people down. And then you can start working on getting the speed limit down. But so it's gonna have to be a multi-step process, especially
Right.
because, when we talked to the road commission during the strategic plan process, I wasn't super heartened by those discussions, unfortunately.
But
So.
I'm stunned.
again, just reiterating, I think we need to kind of focus on how we're gonna do that, not 3-4 years from now.
Right.
That needs to be more upfront. And then decisions will be made from there. That's, again, my opinion.
So like
Everyone
that
agrees, that's
green,
okay.
that median right out.
And that's
by
a
you.
strategic plan change that can still be made. I can
In theory,
shift
sounds
that
awesome.
from,
Right.
I can shift that up in time.
I think
And we were actually just asked to shift some zoning. Brian asked us to shift some zoning stuff back in time,
Yeah,
so
okay.
that'll even it
Yeah.
out.
Steve,
Well, I was gonna say, I know we joke about the roundabouts and all this kind of stuff, and I know there was the case at one point in time right there at Cascade and 28th Street. But what about a roundabout at Cascade and Burton? So that before they even get there, now
Good
they're
idea.
slowing down.
I like
Yep.
that.
Then from there, then they have to.
That's the
kinda-
corridor, because you're coming
Right,
55.
but it's outside of the DJ.
And then it goes
district,
55
right?
again after Thornapple, so you've got to
That's- yeah.
catch them.
Good idea,
So it'd
but
be
not
paid for by
our.
the board.
Yeah, the thing
What about
is,
Little
that's
Rock?
outside our district though.
Now, it could be part of the plan, and that's also where the coordination thing comes in. And also the strategic plan advisory committee has not done anything formal, but talked about continuing to meet. They have changed their name, but they talked about continuing to meet to provide that exact coordination, right?
But
So people are talking to each other.
we also checked into this from a
Right.
legal standpoint. And there is something that says that if if the DDA has these plans
Yes.
and there's property or something that needs to be done that's sort of immediately adjacent to, that can happen in order to make our plans within the DDA district actually work.
Mhm.
So I Grace asked Sandra to check with the attorneys on that.
That's
Okay.
Yeah, we
Eminent
just have,
domain.
so if
We're
it
saying-
benefits, you
Pardon?
make the
Eminent
argument that if
domain.
it benefits the
It's
DJ
not
district's
eminent domain,
businesses,
but
which
it
is pretty
basically saying
lenient.
that if
Then you can
spend money
spend that
outside
money.
the district.
So we could
Hang on,
spend
guys.
money
Whoa,
outside
One at a time.
the
so that-
DDA district, but if it
Something
helps
just
that.
outside.
But
But if we were asking about, because the bridge going across the river, that's why we were
Right.
asking about it.
Gotcha.
So I
That's
guess we
it.
need
economic
additional
development.
clarification from the attorney about whether something like a roundabout at Burton would be looked at under the same lens as Woodbridge.
No, yeah, but I don't think right now. Let's
No,
first figure out
I
our
agree.
strategic.
Yeah,
like, we
well,
just
I mean,
need-
and we're, for
Yeah.
purposes of our conversation and our directive as a board to Chris, and we still need to vote to, I don't know that we need a vote to have him put together the
Quote.
scope
Yes.
and the
You'll wanna
quote.
vote
That'll
to
be something for
approve
the
that.
next meeting.
I'm just confused. I know you guys have said it and gone over it. I'm just confused. So we don't want to open up our TIF plan at all to screw up money coming in.
Right.
Right.
And we want to take advantage of their expertise
Yes.
that we don't have. So how do I say it? And Michelle's goals planning were fantastic.
Yes.
Like one way to use McKenna is that transportation, study,
Yes.
recommendation, that kind of stuff. What would be, can you have any ideas about how you make us look good, where we get to sit back and say, we like this, we don't like this, but we get to take advantage, you know what I mean? Like, do you have any ideas of how we
Yeah.
hire you at the upper level for? Do you get what I'm trying to say without saying
Actually,
it?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Grace. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure.
Are you-
It's what
I thought I
Steve said. It's
understood
what
that. I'm not sure I did.
Okay, so like, we don't want to hire you to rewrite our TIF plan, but we
No.
want,
We're
no,
not-
no,
No.
bad
No,
idea.
you-
That
so
was Grace's
we're gonna have-
example of what not to do.
Yeah.
So.
But we
we'll-
want to take advantage of
Yeah.
we are not professional planners. We want to maximize.
We'll lay out in our scope are the deliverables.
Yes.
The things that we will get to you guys that are,
Does that make sense?
lasting documents
We
that
don't know
you
what
can
we need to
take,
hire you
even if you
for.
don't use, like, in fact, there's gonna be some things where we're gonna say, hey, this is a project the DDA should do, but you're then going to want to go to your engineer and potentially like Mike Reese or someone like that. And they're going to do the construction drawings and they're going to that's because we don't do that. So they're going to and so as you actually get the infrastructure built, you're going to go to other professionals. And that's, I mean, that's completely fine with us. It's just trying to get it done.
Just a
So,
quick follow-up question
Yeah.
and not to hold up the meeting. If someone said that McKenna does a lot of work for the other boards in the township as well.
Mhm.
And what we're doing at the DDA is gonna tie into kind of what everyone else is doing. So when we get that scope of work,
Mhm.
because our work is kind of a piece of the bigger pie that's going on in all of the township.
Mhm.
Is that scope of work and us hiring you for your services then split between the other boards, or is that just for us? Like,
So my understanding is that the piece that he's given us here about the strategic planning, that is covered under the engagement with the township. But anything the DDA is asking him to do relative to DDA related projects
is separate.
is separate
Understood.
and
Yeah.
something that we would like, whether it's the goals and visioning statement for our DDAs, for our own strategic planning.
And that's what we're
That's
asking
what
him to
it was.
put
That's the
together.
thing. Do we need that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So you already, that's the thing.
So,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
would he
that-
be
that was clear.
responsible to figure out what everybody else is doing too?
Well, that is a task item I don't know that we can pay him to be omniscient. I mean, but
But-
I mean, if we could, I would consider it,
But
but
how are all these different groups going to communicate so that we are, again,
a lot, we have to have these
Yeah.
joint.
Yeah,
committee
joint
meetings.
Staff, no,
meetings
yeah,
with
but
the
you were,
Yeah.
that you talked about.
Sandra's our full-time, we have staff, we have Ben, we
Yeah,
have
she
staff,
really is our
we have
conduit.
McKenna.
Yeah.
In theory, so the DDA has a specific, we stay in our lane, it's up to staff, it's the board. I mean, ultimately, the only people that are directly accountable to residents, are the people who are elected, right? So I get all the nasty emails. I tick people off by making mistakes publicly. So we can't take away from the board. Ultimately, they're decision makers. And these are all super important committees and commissions, but between staff, that's their job to be kind of the glue. The board, that's why you recommend things to the board. They approve it because they're the ones who take the good and the bad. They're directly accountable. And then you've got McKenna. So I just don't want it to become like committee,
No,
we've
I
got
agree.
glue. That's why we hire
Bless you.
employees.
Can I just throw one thing out as
Please.
that,
And the communication needs to be improved, I would say.
Yes.
the one thing, when we talk about some of these projects, DDA projects, some of them are at a scale that are pretty big and involve some things that really haven't been done in the township before, like public-private partnership.
Mhm.
That's the thing that I said to Chris. We could really use some guidance, whether it's Chris or someone from McKenna that, has some really good experience to guide us in that process, because that's the thing, from my perspective, I would be flying blind.
Oh,
on it.
same. I agree very much. And I think that if we've learned anything through this strategic planning process, it's that there is additional power in, sourcing out to the experts to
Yeah.
help advise us as to how to do these things. So I would like to just caution us that we need to be sure that we're being mindful that there's an additional cost to all those things. So, I mean, we've worked well with McKenna so far
Right.
in getting scopes and understanding what's being provided. So to the extent that additional projects like that or transportation studies, any of that come up, it will need to be approved by the DDA board before we embark on those. projects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We understand that. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm here, is to get an understanding from
Yeah.
you guys about what you want us to put on the list
Right.
so that we can price it for you. Because what may happen then is I'll bring you stuff and you say, well, we want you to do this, and this, and not those two things, or these two for next year.
Right, yeah,
Push
you
that
might
off.
need to give us an à la carte
And
menu.
that's probably, that's
Well,
kind of what
but
I'm gonna do.
that's-
In fact, I think, because that is what I'm going to do. And then the other aspect is that Grace and I talk about non-DDA stuff, including, I'm beginning more and more to think that we should keep what we had as strategic plan advisory committee intact, maybe add a couple people to it, and then have that group meet monthly just to report on what all the committees are doing, so that they can all go back to each other and say, this is what's going on.
Yeah, and I can
And
tell
that's
you
something that,
how,
like, we could help with, and it would not cost a lot, because it's really just kind of come to a meeting.
because
It's
out of
really
this
not.
process, oh, sorry, Rick, you go ahead. and then
No, you go right ahead.
Well, so your question is strategic plan, big picture, what comes out as far as what residents and different people, what we get feedback wise, right? So the plan, and then how does each committee and commission fit with it? Some kind of village improvement enhancement was huge, came back huge as a huge priority, very popular, right? That kind of falls right into the DDAs. That's perfect for the DDA. And everyone's happy because the DDA has its own funding, right? So then you've got maintain, some people want more parks, some people maintain what we have or preserve certain aspects of Cascade. That falls in one Parks Committee, but the Parks Committee has their own firm for coming up with a parks plan. But so that's kind of property acquisition or maintenance parks, basically Parks Committee. But then you've got Planning Commission. Well, Planning Commission would be making sure one of the things, and in theory would be working with, if they need someone, making sure the zoning, our zoning ordinance and codes are up to date to reflect what the priorities we heard about in the strategic plan.
Right.
So that, Steve, you're looking at me like I probably didn't
No,
explain that well.
no, I'm listening to what you're saying to then ask Chris as you make 100% great sense there. Are these other, like the Planning Commission, the Parks and Rec or anything, have you heard from them? Have they said, yes, we would also like to use McKenna to help us to develop things? Because that leads to, I guess, kind of what you said in the sense that, you'd be, I don't want to say the nucleus.
He's the hub.
Yes,
He's the
you would be
hub.
the hub to know what everybody else
Whatever.
is doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this committee over here is working on this too. And so now we can maybe get these guys to work together instead of everybody using their time and energy and resources doing the same thing.
Yeah,
And so, and that may also tie in with the meetings of getting the representatives from each of the different.
I
groups
I
together.
agree, and that's great. We'd love to play that role. I will say the Parks Committee has Troyer Group and Mike Reese, and he's a landscape architect and he does a great job for them. So, we're happy to do anything that they want us to do, but they've got him, so they're good.
Okay.
Similarly, the Planning Commission has Brian Hilbrands, who as the township planner, it's kind of his choice as to what he wants to take onto his own plate versus if he wants our help with anything. And I've had just an email exchange with him, but in terms of like what he thinks the timeline of getting some of this stuff done is, and we're altering the strategic plan a little bit to accommodate that.
Who's the Planning Commission? I'm just blanking. I should know on the strategic planning committee. I hope I'm saying it quietly so it doesn't come up in the notes. I should know that, Michelle. Who's on the Planning Commission that's on the strategic planning committee?
Scott
No,
Reese.
but no.
Nordyke.
Yeah, but
Nordyke.
Chris Nordyke, but he's not
Nope,
not every
keep
meeting.
that to your
but-
thought. We're good. I see where this is a very important, but I think
Very
there,
important because
Yeah.
if we don't have a hub,
Right.
we've got to
We'll
make sure that we have
follow that.
Yeah, I think-
representation.
but
from
Michelle,
each
do you
of
feel
the
like we have a
different-
hub?
Well, so your point about continuing the strategic committee,
Mhm.
adding a couple of people, maybe adding a couple of people gets us that group, right? That now we have that central committee, that there's a representative from each of because that's where, things that I found out from Mike that the Parks Committee was doing and, things like that.
How about
And it would be
this?
great if that committee could then put together a written report that goes
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
everybody.
Goes to
Yes,
everybody.
certainly.
And that's something
So
we
we
can do,
run it,
right?
Chris.
If you want us to be the hub in
It
that
needs to
way,
be run
And this
that's
could-
something we can totally do.
What about this? If you, so because your contract and agreement, your scope of work is coming to an end with the strategic plan, right? That you were
Yeah.
hired by the township
Yeah.
to do. It would be, I think, a good use of money and pretty cheap if we continued to engage McKenna as,
Yes.
in that link, and instead of every other week or bi-weekly, maybe monthly.
Once a
it
month.
doesn't
But the
have to be
same
That's
thing to
really
keep
all.
that cohesion.
Yes.
Like as a facilitator.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you don't have
And
to,
we could then distribute
DDA doesn't have to worry about
information.
paying, that's
Yeah.
pennies to, it's good preventative.
I
Pennies on the dollar.
Still needs to be approved by the.
By the board.
trustees.
Yeah. And that,
Yeah,
Grace
but
and
I
I'll talk
think-
about that because I think that is a very simple scope. It would be, we'll come to a meeting every month and we'll disseminate a report
Yeah,
on what we heard at the
perfect.
meeting.
Yes.
And then we would be kind of that
Yes.
hub and, we could hell, you could call us and say, hey, what did you guys talk about? I haven't gotten your report yet, that kind of thing. And it's
Right.
like, we'll just include that in whatever we end up
Exactly.
deciding makes sense.
Yeah.
Obviously Danielle's not here right now, but she will be. And so you'll
She'll
have,
be
you'll have
back.
two of us, right? And yeah, I think that would make that makes a lot of sense and is
Remember?
not
Yeah.
time or cost intensive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and it's worded in a way that it's pretty a simple ask that saves a lot of headaches.
Yep.
So Grace, did you put that committee
Oh, I
together
know.
in the first place?
Yes.
Oh, no, I was asking.
Sorry, I'm so defensive. I'm like, yes,
She's
I
the
did. Michelle.
appointer of,
So we just need to do some things to make it a little more formal as we move forward.
and
Yes.
what will the name of this new committee be? Ponder that
Yeah.
as well.
And then remember, everything takes 4 votes, so we got to get all,
Right.
that's how you package it.
I think everyone is going to be aligned on this particular, I mean, I think it's necessary for
Well,
communication.
certainly all the
Chris
people
is
that have been in
Chris-
it.
I
Chris
was
is
thinking strategic plan
proud.
implementation
Chris.
committee.
Copy with Chris.
Right, so the,
You
because
have to be
because it would,
watered.
it's made of two roles.
No.
It would bring information
Controversial.
in from what everyone's working on, but it would also push information, it would also push like instructions out, as in like, hey, your committee is supposed, it's 2027 and your committee
Right.
is supposed to be working on this based on the strategic plan. And the strategic plan implementation committee has instructed you to start working on it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that McKenna instructs, I mean that like that group
Yeah,
says, just keep everyone on task, right?
Right,
This is
right.
what's supposed to be happening right now.
Accountability, some
It's-
pure accountability.
yeah.
So what other information do you need from I've thought of something, and this is kind of tied into Article 9, the Transportation Committee update, but we discussed at the Transportation Committee meeting also getting a scope of work from you
Yes.
regarding helping us investigate options for transportation. Do you want to articulate in summary fashion
Yeah.
to the rest of the board what we discussed?
For everyone else, Jennifer, you're the one who laid out the timeline over the next year of how we get from where we are now to where we can take something or maybe a couple of somethings to the rapid and say, we like these ideas better than what we have now. And, here's how much we think each one will cost and what we're willing to pay for them, and try to lock that down before the contract expires in August. Our role would be to support that process, specifically through helping develop those alternatives, and helping develop the specifics that make them credible to the rapid, right? Trying to speak their language a little bit, in terms of, terms like headways and, things like that. So, that's the literal language, but, so that's basically what we've been asked, and I do have to put that together as well for DDA board approval
At the August
at
meeting.
the August meeting.
It'll be a big meeting for approval, so please be here.
Yeah, so we'll bring that to you guys. And again, I don't see that one as much as a menu because it has to flow to the schedule that we've laid out. But again, you could, I'll set it up with each sort of step priced. So if you want to say, no, we can handle that, Chris, then we can.
It would be
knock
helpful
off.
more so just so that there can be an understanding about what would be included, because part of that piece will be the survey. that we
Yes,
discussed,
yeah, and we
helping
wanted
with
to
the
do some
survey,
public
so-
engagement on that. Actually, we said 3 different types of public engagement. We said general
Right.
residents, we said bus riders, and we said businesses.
Exactly.
Including the fact that the bus riders includes people who don't live in the township.
Yep.
So, well, yeah, that'll be a really key portion of what we're going to work on.
Yes.
Does your firm help with private funding, putting, going out and solicit private funding to help, build some of these projects?
We can do that. We've helped put together public-private partnerships, and we could help, sort of solicit philanthropy as well. I don't always feel that we're the most credible voice in some of that, right? Where if we're going out and they're like, well, who are you? You don't live in the township, whatever, like, yeah, they'd be more willing to listen to Grace or one of you guys. But we're perfectly willing to do it. We have done it elsewhere. And B, we're also able to help with the legwork of that, right? Finding the opportunities, and maybe someone else is the closer, or maybe I'm the closer if you want me, if you think that's the best, but so maybe someone else is the closer, but we all find the opportunities and that sort of thing.
So in projects previously, when there has been private funding
Mhm.
going into on your website, you know, is it arranged, do we engage a real estate person primarily, you know? Because I think this is going to be a critical piece of the puzzle. If you look at the grand ideas, we're going to need private funding. And so you know, how is that going to be accomplished?
Mhm.
And the other part of funding is, do you write grants?
Yes.
Excuse how I point my finger.
Yeah.
Or is it something that we rely on the township or?
We can absolutely do grant applications. We can write grants.
Okay.
Um,
Do you know about potential grants that are out there? That's another question. that
Yeah,
keeps coming
that's-
up.
yes, there are. So the only caveat to what I just said is there are a number of grants that are going to require engineering drawings or something like that. Especially if you're talking about infrastructure. But yeah, we write grants. And there are a number of things that I could run off, you know, what I've applied to, right? And there's other things we haven't, but we can figure it out. So.
Yes.
Can I ask, and I don't know if this plays a role, and I'm not sure if you're on that board or not, but Cascade Community Foundation,
Yep, that's me.
how could they play? Because they do a lot with philanthropy.
They do.
They know the players, they know the people, they're giving money.
Lots of
How-
opportunities.
How can, there be a partnership with that foundation also within the community on some projects? We don't want to tap.
So
everything,
we had a meeting in 2019, maybe 2018, about the community gathering space with with the executive director of the Cascade Community Foundation to have initial conversations about how that might work, because the foundation gives grants. Usually those are a bit smaller, so that's really not what we would be looking at here. The community foundation also does corporate or sponsored projects. So, you know, for example, like if someone wanted to put up a mural and it was going to be funded by donations, they could be run through the foundation for that. But what I see being the most relevant way that they could potentially help is to help with a capital improvement campaign, like they did for the airport viewing park. Because the community foundation was really the integral player in soliciting a lot of those donations. So yeah, I think they need to be brought in on the ground floor. And Grace and Michelle were at an event that the foundation just had so that I could introduce them to the executive director to start building those connections. So
This is coming up at the Parks Committee level too, because the township, we're like limited government, right? And the township, the government, we need to figure out, there's tools we can use, but really in the most successful communities, you may not even know where the government offices are located, right? You see beautiful businesses and people want to live there, but the government's in the background. So the most successful communities have which I don't think we need to improve on, but we've got a kind of like a friend, you know, there's a private base, so connections to bring in donations, money, volunteers, and then also other funds, other money that's out there at different county, state, federal level. And then you can so we
Well,
can be
that's-
part of it, but we can't.
that's the reason the community foundation came into existence, was there's a huge spirit of philanthropy here in Cascade, and people wanted to give money to the township. And the township said, well, you know,
It just didn't go anywhere?
no, they created the foundation so that there was a mechanism for people to donate money.
So
to
now
do
I,
projects.
okay, so the township created the Cascade Community Foundation,
Many years ago, yes.
the actual township?
Members of the township board, I don't know that it was the actual township.
Because you need a separate philanthropic
You do.
arm.
You
keep the
have
township
to, and because right now I don't think, so I had.
It's an independent entity, but the people who were in place at the time were involved with creation.
Okay. 'cause
Of
I've got
of the
no-
501c3,
Yeah.
so that people who lived here,
Money.
yeah, people who wanted to give money had a
It's now a
place to give
vehicle
it.
to do that.
Yes.
Perfect, because don't you think we have a lot of individuals and businesses within, there's a lot of opportunity that
This is
people,
true,
and then people will have their own specific causes that they're more interested in, but that's, you know,
Sure.
That's also
part-
something
that's
they do.
their-
I don't want to take us off the topic, but yes.
great.
We keep talking about the central gathering place. Is the project that the Friends of the Library are talking about, is that what we're talking about, the central gathering place, or are we talking some other project?
I think the answer to that question I'm gathering is that either that project either is the central gathering place or someone needs to speak up now and say it's not.
It's not.
Because it's
when you
on-
ask, their project is catered more toward, or it's a gathering place. I don't think it's the
Okay.
central
Well,
gathering place.
So, but we also had the conversation of, if you're gonna have a gathering place, then it should be a gathering place, not multiples within the township, unless they're very specific, targeted, like, this is a sports
I
park.
guess it
this
depends
is
on how you
a-
define it. It depends on how you define it, I think.
Yeah.
I'm probably.
But I think, when she presented that plan, I think what was nice about it was that gathering space was one of the phases. And it was, in that area out there that there's a lot of land and that it becomes an opportunity to have a gathering place in Cascade, because the fact of the matter is, based on, geography and real estate and the way things are set up, there's really not a good place down in the lower village to do it.
And we don't have Tuffy yet.
Right. So, and even with that, Grace, it still wouldn't be enough. There's not enough parking. There's, all of that. So how do we, then it's kind of maybe falls on our shoulders to understand, how do we make connection between those two things,
Yeah.
upper and lower village, right? There's an event going on. Okay, so do we want to drive people maybe further down to Cascade and 28th Street, where there's lots of eateries and bars and, things like that? That's kind of what I see our role as going forward and what that all looks like.
On the list of things to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Other items that we need to include in the scope of work. Okay,
I think we got it.
thank you. Stick
Um,
around though, because we
yes.
do have, if you can, we
Yes.
do have the Transportation Committee report. So if I've forgotten something, I'd like it to come back up.
Awesome.
To close down the strategic plan update and goal building for DDA board, other comments or questions? All right, moving
So,
on.
I apologize. So
Yes, go
then
for it.
at this point, we're just gonna wait till the next meeting for Chris to come back with his proposal as far as for the scope
Correct.
of work that they may be able to do to help us, and then we'll be able to move forward at that point.
Yes, and assumedly, we will have a finalized strategic plan, because isn't that teed up for
Yeah,
decision by the board
next
at the,
week.
yeah, at next week's meeting.
So, could we have your proposal prior to our meeting so that we could have a chance to look at it? So we're prepared to talk about it in the meeting?
Would you like it in advance of the meeting packet? Is that what you're asking?
With,
Um,
no,
With the meeting packet or?
I'm
or-
okay. I mean, it's
the
enough
meeting
time
packet
for
within
me,
5
but I
minutes.
have the luxury of time, so.
Just saying, Alexander, when you set up the meeting packets.
The Friday before the meeting.
Sufficient time?
It is for me, but if
It's fine.
you're raising your hand.
Could add one more thing, is trying to define how all the different committees and subgroups are going to communicate.
Yeah, that's, yes, but I think that goes to the proposal and the work on Grace to the township board.
Yeah.
You guys don't need to fund that.
Correct.
That the board should fund that because it's for everybody.
And again, I think communication needs to be improved, but you've got the board and then you've got staff that's hired to do exactly that. And then you've got different people that have different like different committees and commissions. So I think a little bit will go a long way in helping
But
everyone feel.
I like this
they're
idea of the
clarified.
ongoing committee, though.
Yeah.
That'll be the hub.
Yeah.
All right, Article 7, we've already covered. So that brings us to my favorite topic on every agenda, the holiday lights, RFP. I hope you've all had time to review the holiday.
See what I
lights
mean,
RFP.
Sandra?
Sorry, I don't mean to be
You
flipped
might
on it. I
be.
just.
I know.
Let's
This
try to
is
keep
the-
it, let's try to keep it polite. Let's keep
But-
it in the holiday spirit,
This-
shall we?
Be associated with
Bah
Mississippi.
humbug.
See, July 4th, and now we're talking about the
Christmas in
holidays.
July.
That was
July.
it.
It's every month.
As
It's
it
every,
should
it's gonna
be.
be on the agenda every month. Please take it away.
So staff asked, or staff, the DDA board asked staff to put this RFP together. And in the RFP, I did include two bid items. Something we talked about at the last meeting, which was this company providing all the lighting, basically in the village area, including the streetlight poles, the snowflakes, the lights at Tassel Park, the lights at the Museum Gardens Park. And then an alternate bid, if you will, of just the lighting of Tassel and the Museum Gardens Park. And then the Buildings and Grounds Department would do the streetlight poles and the snowflakes. So that's how I set this document up. I did include in there a couple of highlighted areas just for clarification from the board tonight. And then any other items that you guys found that you'd like me to make some changes to or.
Did you talk to
Such.
Buildings and Grounds about what their preference was?
I did. Jim had said if the company is doing the lighting of the streetlight poles, he'd like them to hang the snowflakes too. He did say the guys do like hanging the string lights on the streetlight poles and the snowflakes. That is kind of their slow time,
Yeah. that's what I
if
told
you
him.
will. So they don't mind doing that, but they either want this company to do all of it or just the Tassel Museum Gardens Park, and then they would take care of what they have been handling in the past. So. Sorry,
Nope.
so just a couple things really quick. Light strands should be white in color. I know we use the majority of white strands. We did have some multicolor. I don't know how the board feels about multicolor. No, I'm getting some.
Not my favorite.
I
but
like the white.
I like the white.
Okay,
I'm so happy that we're aligned on this because I feel like I have some style now.
okay. We'll keep that white in color. I have the completion of the lighting to be installed by November 21, which is just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Generally, obviously, we don't light the lights at the Museum Gardens Park until the tree lighting ceremony, which is that Sunday following Thanksgiving, but
Mhm.
everything else gets illuminated prior to that. So if everyone's good with that time frame, or if you
Yep.
want it earlier, we can adjust accordingly.
I had no notes on this. Anyone?
No, just that the B and G is quiet during that year. So when I talked to, or during that time of year, so he said they have no problems doing the
Right, hanging the streetlight poles
polls.
and the
they're open to
snowflakes.
How if we want them done differently or something.
And I believe
And
you,
then,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I believe you, in what you maybe about to say, is I believe you had requested a potential, when do we want to turn them off or take them down?
When do we want them off? Taking down sometimes is tricky only because of weather.
Right.
But if we want to stay a date for, hey, we want these off by January 15 or January 30, I mean. I don't-
I think, I don't know. it's hard in my mind to benchmark an actual date for removal.
Why don't
Depends
you
on the
say
company.
those
It
2
kind of
weeks,
depends on the
January
weather.
15th to January 30th, weather dependent?
Well, and they can, I mean, they can be unplugged,
Right.
so that they're
can be
not
off.
illuminated. They
I
can be
think that's what
off,
the
but
question
they
is.
might
Yeah.
still be
Yeah.
up on the structure, in the past, AAA, we would turn them off, but AAA
Right.
might come in March depending on weather,
Right.
to remove
So
them
my question is, do we want
So-
to specify a date for,
for just off, to turn them
Oh,
As
off.
opposed to
I thought it
down?
was Removal, okay.
No,
I don't know. I think we just kind of defer to the.
yeah, that's
they're all
kind of where I
hustling
am.
after the holidays to get everyone's taken down and.
I'm not that worried about
Okay.
it. I mean,
Okay.
in my mind, getting the snowflakes down would be a higher priority
Yeah, I
than
agree.
getting the
Yes.
lights
And-
unwound.
right, Buildings and Grounds does, they remove the snowflakes and the string
Okay.
lights.
Plus
also.
white lights, wintry, neutral.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
is there a reason, so to speak, I guess, that you're looking for in terms of a cutoff date? Is it just
I'm
for
just
save on
asking-
utilities, or is it
No, no,
from the
no.
aspect of,
It's
okay,
some-
what,
some
holidays
people
are
say,
done, let's.
Move on.
yes.
Right, I hear that from some people, holidays are over, let's
Boxing
turn
Day.
these things off, and
Right.
so I'm just asking for that purpose.
To me, snowflakes is winter.
It's winter.
It does say.
It's
winter.
not
That's fair.
holiday.
Correct. Yep, I agree 100%.
Santa
So,
Claus.
So we can just kind
whenever
of play
comes
it
down,
by,
It comes down.
that works for me.
What about, does this include, so if the buildings and grounds does the polls, what about new lights we need? Is that separate from the RFP? Do we just buy those ourselves or how does that work?
So I have put in a request to Bronner's, which is where we have purchased the strand lights in the
Mhm.
past to get a cost for those lights.
Because we need
So, We
replacements,
need
right?
replacements, yeah,
And weren't we gonna order some extra potentially for, or no?
of the string lights.
Yeah.
We need to order quite a few because ours have fallen apart due to weather
Do
and
we need a subcommittee for this to wade through all that, or is it gonna be, do you feel simple?
I don't think we need a subcommittee.
I, yeah,
Can you imagine?
I mean, we'll get those quotes in and we
Okay,
can
all right,
see
cool.
who.
Anything
yeah.
else?
I,
on
can I,
holiday
hit one more
lights? Oh,
thing,
yes,
if I may,
sorry.
sorry, really quick. Do we want to add an opportunity for the contractor to add options or alternates, kind of as additional expenses? So let's say a contractor says, hey, we have this really cool, I
Inflatable.
don't, inflatable. Lighted arch,
Seriously.
lighted arch that
It
we
had
would
to.
put at Tassel Park that people could walk through to, do we want to add something for additional or again, just asking,
That we're open to some creative flair. that we could
right?
Accept or turn down.
As long as we're
Right.
clear that it's not
Yeah.
something we're gonna be bound to.
Yeah, no, I have it as an additional expense and, we can pick and choose if we want for that option.
I don't know, do you?
I
I'm,
say-
I'm getting mixed signals on that
Conversation.
one.
I say stick to the snowflake lights.
They have a great idea, let them present it, right? I mean, and then, right? So we can talk about lights again.
As long as it's not going to.
Right, because it's gotta be on every
Cause
agenda.
us to have an extra meeting to decide on
A
that.
special meeting just
Special
for
meeting.
the,
And it's
So
included with
this-
their RFP, but
Steve's inflatables. The only inflatable I will entertain is a giant frost.
I vote for Culver's to have an inflatable Santa Claus.
On the top of the building.
there we go. Put it up on the roof.
Any other holiday decoration information or questions?
So we're going with a different, so we're putting an RFP out for
so we're.
snowflakes and lampposts are fine, right? B and G is gonna put those up.
No, so we have two options in the bid document. So one option they will bid on is to do all the work, including the streetlight poles and the snowflakes. The alternate option would be for them to just do the lighting at Tassel Park and the Museum Gardens Park, in which case then Buildings and Grounds would do the streetlight poles and the snowflakes. So we're bidding it both ways to get those prices, see how they come in, and then we'll also get the quote from Bronner's on the strand lights.
But then as far as the two parks and the lights that we've had in the past, do we own those lights? Are those the ones, do they also need replacement or, we're not?
So the Tassel
work with
Park
what we've
and
done in the
Museum Gardens
past.
Park and the Pat AAA Lawn Care always brought those lights and hung them for us.
So is that, are
So,
they gonna keep? doing
so
it or is
those
it
were
this is
not
new?
ours.
Okay, got it.
And so quite, a lot of companies, when, and I set it up in the proposal, if they're doing all the lights, they will supply, all the
Decoration as a
materials,
service.
right,
And they would
Right.
provide the ones for the poles too.
correct.
So no,
Now-
so we need to know that decision if they're gonna, if we're gonna take them before we order anything from Bronner's.
Right.
Yes.
So we will have
If
to
we
make that
choose it.
decision, because if we are just having them do Tassel Park and the Museum Gardens Park, we will have to buy the string lights for Buildings and Grounds.
And
too.
if we have them do the two parks, I'm sorry to beat this Christmas dead horse. Are we bound by what we did in the past? No, I think it's great. I'm saying, or are we just saying submit what RFPs basically say, give us your design ideas and what you think and we'll
Oh.
choose?
I get, we can do it however you'd like. I did put in there the river birch tree, basically what we've done in the past.
Mhm.
But I'm open to direction, and if you want them to submit some design for those, we can put that in the RFP as well.
I think it makes it real
I
complex.
was just
I'm
thinking.
not trying, I'm
that.
just
I
curious.
think keep it simple.
Let's
My-
dip a toe and see how
Yeah.
this works. Yeah.
One thing, and I'm looking at this and I may just not be
Okay.
seeing it in here, but
I was
if you
Interesting.
have them give you pricing so that you can tell whether basically they're giving better pricing based on the fact that the scope is larger would probably be helpful. So, because if it comes down to, well, we have to make this decision based on what? If we do more work, then they're giving us better pricing. So I don't know if I can't tell, it's just me reading this, whether it's gonna be broken out that way in their
So
pricing.
I put a bid statement in here.
Uh-huh,
Where they have to give us a number for bid item 1, which is spelled out
Okay.
in the RFP as, that's all the work.
yeah,
And then they have to document the number of service calls, and then there's a spot for notes in there.
okay,
And then there's also bid item 2, which is just the lighting at the
Right.
Tassel and Museum Gardens Park.
right.
So they do have to separate that out. Is that what you're?
So I'm saying for the larger scope, which I think is item 1, that's
Right.
everything, right?
Yeah,
Are you asking them to break it out by just what's in? You see those 2 parts?
Oh.
So what's in bid item 2 is a separate line item. And then the rest of it, that's what I'm saying. If you can ask them to break the pricing out
Because you're
that
wondering
way.
if they're gonna charge us more
Oh.
for just doing the one
Oh.
project.
I
Or
see where
that
you're going with
we're
that.
getting a better price because the scope is bigger. That's what I'm wondering.
Okay.
Because so B and G is sitting, it has minimal projects in the winter and we're already paying, like they're already on the clock. I think it makes the most sense cost wise, and we already know what we want for them to put the lights up on the poles.
We'll find out. That's why we're doing this.
That's why we're
Not a
doing it.
decision we are gonna
Yeah.
make today.
Just
But-
as long as it's separated.
Yeah,
Yes.
right, yeah.
No, but I'm just saying it's already there. It's man hours, so it'd be shocking.
And they'll have the much smaller scope, of course, but we do have the trees for them to put up as well. So I did not put the Christmas trees in the bid document. So,
Good.
And then the only thing we own are the snowflakes as of right now.
right.
And based on what
Because-
we get back from these bids, we could end up owning more lights as a.
Correct.
That's a
Yeah,
good
the
idea.
majority of our string lights, we've had to dispose of.
replaced.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
More holiday lighting questions, information? All right, I'm moving us along to Article 9.
Wait, do we need a vote?
Committee, not until,
Comes back.
If, do you want to approve the
want to
RFP?
approve
Do
the
do you want me
RFPs?
to, or,
I'll entertain a motion to approve the RFPs as amended for our discussion to add the additional line item for additional work. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll second.
You can make the motion? You're gonna make the motion. Anyone
s-
want to?
I second.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you, Sandra.
thank you.
Moving forward to Transportation Committee. We've got a very short memorandum here, which we've really already kind of discussed this during our conversation with Chris about getting a scope of work for Chris to help us out in identifying alternatives and other solutions, and then helping with the surveys that we discussed. And other than that, we made some very minor changes to the timeline, but the end date is still the same because we would like to have all the information available to present to the board well in advance of the expiration of the contract with ITT. So are there any questions about that? Comments? All right. That's,
Oh, that was
unless
easy.
any other member of the committee has something else to add, that's really kind of already covered it. If you have questions as you're putting that together, let us know. Just otherwise get it to Sandra for inclusion in the packet along with the other scopes that you're putting together. Thank you for
Absolutely.
that.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. Coming in.
So that brings us to Article 10. Any other business? Our next meeting is August 16. You saw, and as I've asked Sandra to include in all of our packets, the approved minutes from the Township Board, just as an informational item. There isn't anything to discuss with that. Is there anything else that we need to discuss, Sandra?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
I
actually have a
question.
Chris, I forgot yes.
to mention that earlier. Do you guys mind if I attend that meeting by Zoom?
Not a bit. That's fine.
So then I can just log in to what's on the agenda and you guys be able to hear me and,
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, I'll be en route to a different meeting, but I'll have an hour and a half.
Very good. Yeah, that, you know, and I'll ask that the board kind of come prepared with their questions so that we can get it all in during your window.
I
Um,
appreciate that. I'm sorry
And
for the
coordinate with Sandra so that we can figure out where to put you on the agenda so that it aligns with your availability. Like if you know that you're available at 5:30, we'll put you up first.
I'm available 5:30 to 7:00.
Okay, so yeah, we'll get you early in the agenda to make sure that we cover. I'm not sure what else we're going to have on that agenda. We'll have the Virgil Westfield issue, which may take some discussion. So let's be sure that this issue
Yep.
is first.
We can do that.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
much.
you.
Drive
Have a
safe.
good evening.
Thanks, Chris.
Any other business?
That's a question.
Yes.
The DDA district, does that include the industrial area like Cascade Engineering that it's outside of it?
You
does
mean
not.
over to Fulton?
Oh, wait, it doesn't, because otherwise.
No, it's just
No.
up here.
No, that's on 36th Street you're talking about.
We don't go.
So it's
that
too,
far.
we're closer to 28th.
So there's a map in the TIF plan.
I'll find it. I'm sure it's looked at.
Is Tassel Park in
Yeah,
the DDA?
Yes,
Yes.
Is it?
yes.
Or is it all of Castle Park or just the Tuffy
it's
Park?
just before
All-
the bridge.
All of Tassel Park is in the DDA.
And then across the street, it includes,
The gathering space.
Right.
or the
Yeah.
gathering,
Museum,
yeah.
Gardens
and the
Park.
one next to it,
Whatever it's called now.
the white, it's white now, right? It's got really cute.
Used to be the
little-
Windsor.
Luna, do you know
Luna.
about that?
No, I tried to stop in to say hi, but no one was there.
Your
What is
flower
it?
baskets are gorgeous.
I think it's like a, accessories.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's new.
Yeah.
Did you go in? Are they open?
I tried, but no one was, maybe they're not. open yet.
Soft opening.
Yeah.
Soft, no, I made that up. I don't know that it's. soft opening. Anything else, Sandra?
I have nothing.
Anything else from other board members? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Don't forget to turn off your computers.